All right, good. We've got a lot of slides, and I like to use slides because I just think it gives you something visually besides you using your oral, your hearing. You also can use your eyes. Hopefully then you'll get two ways of getting the information into your brains. Okay, so that's why I do make a lot of them. I hope it's not too much for you, but that's just my style. This is the second lesson that's been called Choosing God's Best. So some of our previous material that we did, if you do need to go through it if you have not listened to it, because some of this is built on top of it, such as Living the Difference Camp when we did BGR. That would be the first level that is a foundation, and some of these materials do build upon that, such as the 4 levels of friendship. And that will be part of our handout. Next week I will be giving you some handouts that you can write on that will help you maybe not have to take as many notes if you're taking a lot of notes, and you can write on them. I may next week actually give you a handout of slides, so then you can just put additional information on the slides, because we are going to be doing quite a bit. Another series that we did was the sacredness of singleness. And some of you, I don't even know if that was recorded or not, but that was telling us how it is a gift from God to be single. Just as it is a gift from God to be married. Doesn't mean one is better than the other. In fact, oftentimes our society does give the advantages of being married, and it's like the person who is single is the poor thing who just never obtained it all. But actually, during our lessons for the sacredness of singleness, we did go over the advantages of being single. And actually, when you are single, you have a lot more time, and you only have to go on what you want to do. Not that you're selfish, that's not what we're focusing on here. It's that you are given the chances to use that time to do so many productive things for God. Whereas if you're married, like myself, my time is divided between me, my husband. If I don't factor in time for him, he's just like anybody else. He gets his feelings hurt. And then I have my children, who also have situations where they need their mother's time. So now my effectiveness for God must factor in my time for my husband, must factor in the time for my children, must factor in the time for my household, and then my ministry must be squeezed in. However, when I was single, my time factor was me and God. You know, so there are some advantages to being single, and it's a wonderful time. Would you get that? That's Barrick, Michaela. That is a wonderful time that we can use that energy for God. And it's supposed to be a time of a very closeness between you and God, and not a time where you're just thinking about how miserable you are because you don't have a mate. Then you're wasting all of that precious time. So that was what we focused on in the sacredness of singleness. That was all before we started on this series of lessons, Choosing God's Best. So this lesson, we are gonna focus on counterfeit. How do you know if you have had a counterfeit relationship in the past? And we are going to go past just the physical, because I think most Christians already realize and would not fall into the trap of getting involved physically. Sometimes they do, and they suffer as a result of it because it's a very painful situation, and unfortunately, sometimes it actually affects the rest of their life, and sometimes they don't ever recover. Sometimes they do recover with a lot of scars, and sometimes they don't. It's a very, very long time before they make their way back to God, if they do, and all of that time they had there is lost. So this lesson we are going to talk about on counterfeit emotional oneness and counterfeit spiritual oneness, because we've already talked about physical oneness, things that we should and shouldn't do in the physical, all right? Would you give me the first slide? So this week, again, we're talking about good choices versus God's choice. Not that I'm saying that anybody you like, especially when it's someone that you may already start liking within the 2020 group, you might think they're a good choice, and I would probably say, yeah, they are. I'd probably say, you're pretty intelligent. that you figured out that these are very, very good choices. Of course, the choices here are much better than the choices out there. You're much further ahead to look within what God is working on someone's life than just pick somebody off the street, because they have a lot more baggage with them and a lot further for God to work with them before they're even to the point that you would want to consider them. But we don't want good choices. We actually want God's choice for each of you. Not just a good choice. We want the best choice, all right? We want a great choice. So we have to focus then and rechange our thinking to achieve this. Galatians 5:25 said, since we live by the Spirit, let us keep in step with the Spirit. In other words, when you're getting ready to choose God's best, it cannot be just a matter of choice by your mind or your emotions. It has to be something that is birthed in the Spirit, with God helping you. You say, well, how is that birthed? Well, that's what we're going to go through. We are next week going to start on the series of lessons on courtship, how to have a godly courtship. And we're going to go through the phases of it and how you can proceed from step by step, all right? Next slide. The principle you must know while you are coming to try to form a conclusion of how to find somebody that is God's best is not every good choice is God's choice. And seeking God's will is the most important part of selecting your mate. You have to go by the Spirit. You can't go by your emotions, because the Bible says the heart is wicked, and you can't trust your heart. So you can't go also by your eyesight. You can't say, wow, she's very good looking, so I know that's the will of God. Because one day you could wake up and she could be 80 pounds heavier. And then does the will of God change? No, you're married to her. Maybe they could have an accident and something happened to them. Does that mean you're no more in the will of God? No, we don't go by sight and we don't go by emotions. We go by the Spirit. In fact, when you think about courtship, I want you to think about it this way. The primary reason for marriage should be the conviction that a particular match is God's choice for you. That's what courtship should be. That the reason you're having courtship is that it's the primary reason for marriage. And that should be based on the conviction that this particular match is God's choice for you. Now, I'm not saying that when you start the process of courtship that you have to marry the first person that you're courting. No, you could find out as time is going along, just like Brother Willoughby and his Korean friend who happened to be my roommate. Yeah, it was very interesting, right? She was my roommate for a year and a half, or almost 2 years in Bible school. We were very good friends. So he was very close with her before either one of us thought of anything romantically. But he proceeded in such a way that he felt like this could be my possible marriage partner. And as he proceeded in a good fashion, so that when the breakup did not work, they were still able to be friends. And even to this day, they're still friends. And I'm still friends with her. So it wasn't a weird type of an ending. So sometimes, even though you may find somebody and you're looking at him and you think, I think you would be a suitable marriage partner, and you start a courtship process with him, it does not mean it's a sin that if you don't marry him. But you must do it in a godly fashion so that when you find out, hey, this isn't the one, that everything can be dissolved and you still be in a type of relationship where you can be friends, where you can look each other and not be ashamed of the things you've done, and that you're able to be around each other without hating them and having bitterness. In fact, I once had a young lady who came up to me for counseling. This has been, I don't know how many years ago, maybe 15 years back. And the problem was that this individual had gone through many, many relationships. And the more difficult is most of those relationships were within the church. And so what was more difficult is that they had been sexually active, all of the relationships. And so when I met with the individual, they were quite honest and said, I've done this, I've with this one, and I've done this with this.